Hello and welcome. I'm Peter, and we're here to make progress, not perfection. But on that way to progress, we find ourselves frustratingly climbing out of the green ranks. So today I'm here to give you the top 5 mistakes that are made in the green ranks. I would love to get a big shout out to all the viewers who decided to submit their footage of the games. We had an even bigger turnout this time than last time. So props to you guys. Woohoo! We did it. Now, the main difference between the teal ranks and the green ranks is that the green rank players tend to have a slightly better handle of their characters. They also tend to have a better grasp of the combos and a rough game plan. But similarly to the teal rank players, green rank players are more or less kind of throwing attacks out there like spaghetti at a wall and seeing what sticks and what doesn't. So with that intro out of the way, let's get to the mistakes. Counting down from number 5, we have not utilizing throws. That's right, for the vast majority of players, it seems they are hesitant to use throws. Yes, I realize that not every character in the game has a throw game, quite like King, Jack, Dragunov, Jin, Armor King, Marduk, or insert someone else who has a really good throw game. But nonetheless, throws should not be neglected. I've seen players just get thrown left and right again by their opponents, and then get thrown some more by their opponents. Yet they themselves don't use throws. Keep your opponents honest and see if they know how to throw break. Oftentimes opponents will go for options like throws that they themselves are weak against. If you see your opponent relying heavily on throws, you probably want to check them, right? Try a 1 throw, try a 2 throw, or even try a 1+2 throw. Try them all. Now, I know what you're thinking, but Peter, my character only has a 1+2 throw and that's it as a command throw. Everything else is a generic throw. That's fine. I realize this. Whichever character you're playing probably doesn't have a complete throw game. A lot of characters in the game don't. However, using throws can still be important because they can be used to switch sides if your opponent doesn't break, and sometimes even when they're broken, they still switch sides. So potentially, this is an opportunity to get out of a disadvantaged state, or potentially to break up your opponent's momentum. If they're pressure, using a throw can break off some of that momentum. And they can also be used to keep your opponent on their toes. It's just something else to add to your arsenal of attacks, really, to not just be throwing out attack, block, attack. Just think of throws as high attacks that force your opponent to have to interact. Number 4, we have players not punishing hop kicks and hop knees. And for the purpose of this section, I'm just going to refer to it as hop kicks, so I don't have to say both words. As a green rank player, I know there's a lot of unknown factors. There's a lot of different strings being thrown at you, a lot of unknown moves, and that's perfectly fine. You'll learn as you go along. However, I do urge that green rank players learn how to deal early on with hop kicks. And this here serves as your introduction to block punishing. Hop kicks, for the most part, are used by beginners as a panic button. When opponents feel pressured or just randomly out in the open, they're going to want a hop kick because it provides a launch. Hop kicks start up typically in 15 frames, hit mid, provide a full launch on hit, and are usually minus 13 frames on block. If you happen to block this, please try your best to punish with your minimum of a 10 frame punisher. Learning to punish, or at least trying to punish hop kicks, will serve you well because 1, it will get you into the mindset of punishing these types of attacks, even if you're using a suboptimal punish. As a beginner, you don't need to be bogged down by perfectly punishing this with your 13 frame punisher. Sure, it would be optimal, but we're learning here. Using a 10 frame punish for now will do, or a 12 frame punish will do. 2, it will start slowly to dissuade your opponent from continually using this attack, or else you get free damage. If you don't punish hop kicks, however, at all, then there's literally no reason for the opponent to stop throwing out hop kicks, right? After all, why should they stop throwing out hop kicks if you aren't going to punish them? It's a free, safe launch for them if that's the case. 3, you will get the most bang for your buck in practice mode. And what do I mean by this? Well, in Tekken, there are a lot of characters, a lot of characters with hopkicks. And here is the list that I've went ahead and compiled. And you guys can thank Draymond for sitting with me and looking through this list. If you learn about these hopkicks and what they look like and how to punish them, then you've basically learned a universal punish across 20 characters with one punisher. That's a great deal. Number 3 is players using Cebolos. Yeah, alright. I know I'm already going to get a great deal of players who disagree with me on this, so hear me out. Players should not learn to rely on snake edge-like moves. And by this, I mean lows that typically start up in, 25 frames or slower, grant a full combo on hit, and are launch punishable on block. Yes, snake edges exist in the game, absolutely. However, I recommend that beginner players steer away from these types of attacks if they truly want to learn to get good at the game. Snake edges will work on bad connections, 3 bars and below, almost guarantee they will work, and they will work on inexperienced players. However, on good connections versus experienced players, they become more of a liability than anything else. When players who regularly snake edge eventually climb up to a certain rank and the snake edges start to lose their effectiveness, the players I tend to see seize up and become a little lost. They plateau. There used to be this fantastic low from their perspective. Wow, there's this fantastic low, and it becomes this giant death trap later on. And they're unable to open up their opponents that can react to these types of attacks. So each time they go for this option, it's blocked and they're launch punished for using it. And since the player has, for the vast majority of their games, relied upon this attack, they don't know how to properly use the rest of the lows that the character has. If you just want to play for fun for the game and you don't care about getting good, then you can snake edge to your heart's content. However, if you eventually want to get good, go to tournaments or even go to offline events, then I highly recommend that you cut these fucking attacks out of your toolkit. The number 2 mistake, and making a surprise guest appearance, is key moves. Right, players I watch are still not utilizing their key moves and are not using their key moves correctly. I can't stress this enough. If you are not using your character's key moves, then effectively you're limiting yourself. It's like trying to win a foot race with one leg tied behind your back. Can it be done? Yeah, you can hop across the finish line really fast with one foot. Is it effective? Oh, fuck no. Why don't you run with the other foot, right? Let's take a look at some examples, and again, I'm not trying to put players down. I'm just trying to prove a point. So here we have Mr. PK Virgil, our trusty viewer, fighting against Random Late. PK Virgil is probably unfamiliar with this matchup, which is fine, and not really sure what he's supposed to do, so he's sticking with his own game plan, trying to figure things out as he goes along. However, what's missing from this game plan are some of Brian's key moves and strings. For example, our Brian player here does not use Brian's 1-2-1 string at all to check to see if the opponent is patient. We don't use forward 3 here to try to fish for a counter hit of some sort. We don't use down 4 as a low poke when the opponent is on the ground. We don't use down back 3 to high crush high attacks. We don't use northern cross either to try to crush high attacks or even make a counter hit attempt. We don't use Brian's down 4-1 machine gun blow to immobilize and check the opponent with a mid. We don't use down 4-2-1 as a fast mid poke, and we also don't use hatchet kick here to gain plus frames and start applying pressure from a low. Also, I feel like we could probably stand to use more 3+4s as a means to keep the opponent away from us from approaching us. That is a total of 8 additional tools that we could have used in this matchup. So instead, what are we using here, right? What are we using in this matchup? Well, we're using a lot of snake edges, which point number 3, I think? Point number 3, I've already made this point. The occasional down forward 2-3 to check opponents for counter hits. Forward 4-1, sometimes to whiff punish properly, and then other times we're just YOLOing it, I guess, as at possible distances. Back 1 to apply pressure, and jabs. That's it. That's all the tools we're using here for Brian. So the tools that we're using for Brian, I can count on one hand. 5 attacks. This makes our life a hell of a lot harder than it actually needs to be, because effectively we're trying to play the opponent with just 5 attacks, Our opponent really doesn't have to worry much besides these 5 attacks, and that makes us really predictable. Coming in at number 1, the number 1 mistake that plagues all players is whiffing. Whiffing, 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 and more whiffing. No one is exempt from this mistake. Everyone who submitted games to me had whiffs, and everyone who's watching, Peter knows you also whiff too. Oh yeah, you thought you didn't submit your game so you were saying, no, I know you whiff. Viewer, I know you whiff. Look, I know this is extremely hard not to do since both you and your opponent are moving, and trying to find where your attacks are going to land is hard. And moving targets obviously harder than stationary targets. At some point in time, whiffs are going to happen and it's inevitable. However, that being said, some of you guys are getting away with some egregious whiffs and you think it's fine, while others of you guys who made whiffs, well, you guys had justice served to you and got punished for it. Nevertheless, my friend, my advice for this is threefold. 1, stop expecting the opponent to just randomly run into your attacks that you throw out. I know a lot of times this does work on many players in the lower ranks. You throw out an attack and the players run into it and bam, you get a launch. Don't think this way right now. The goal is to work on spacing and making sure that all of your attacks make connection on your opponent, whether it's hit or block. All right? Your goal is to either hit the opponent or get it blocked. I don't care if you're throwing out a hop kick or whatever, make sure it makes contact. Second, if you're going to whiff an attack in an attempt to bait the opponent, which is fine, just make sure that it's properly spaced or it's an attack that recovers very quickly. For instance, don't throw out a giant haymaker attack and then try to bait your opponent. That's not going to work. Instead, try to use an attack like a jab or a down forward 1 or a generic down forward 2, electric, or an orbital that recovers quickly. And lastly, the range of your attacks. Oftentimes, players are whiffing because they kind of know the range of their attacks, but not really. There is not a quick and easy solution to this for me to teach you, except to be slightly closer than you think you need to be to throw out an attack. Also, another thing is to just be conscious of the type of attacks that you're using and how close you need to be for it, right? So being closer than you need to be can be an asset in this sense. Thank you everybody once again for watching this video and submitting your footage. This has truly been an interesting experience watching the games and seeing as a whole what mistakes are commonly shared between you guys, right? Not necessarily individual mistakes, but collaborative mistakes. Up next, top 5 mistakes made in the yellow ranks. Thanks for watching guys and joining me on this video. Also, thank you so much patrons for your ever so gracious support. Without you, this would have not have been possible. And if you're new here and you like what you see, consider subscribing and hitting that bell notification icon. Below in the descriptions as always, I also have my links to my Discord, Twitter, Twitch, and Patreon page. See ya next time.